I am Forrest.
And I am Nair.
And welcome to Perspeculative. On today's episode, we're talking about scenes from our favorite anime shows that caught us off guard in such a way where we said to ourselves, everything went better than expected. For the characters, for the audience, for everyone watching, everything went better than expected. And today we are talking about a fairly recent anime that came out during the 2020 and 2021 anime season, in which nothing else in the world was happening at all. And that is a Case Study of Vanitas. A very charming anime.
So the scene that we're referring to happened in the catacombs, where our protagonists find themselves and meet someone who considers themselves their enemy, i.e. Roland.
Yes. We have Roland, one of the chaucers for the church, basically a glorified knight, who's shown to be both very strong in his religious zealotry, and also an extraordinarily skilled fighter, as our protagonists find out fairly early after meeting him.
And more clever than he seems, because when they first, that is Vanitas and Noe, when they first meet Roland, he seems kind of goofy, like he's lost and he's silly, and you can't really take him too seriously, and like, oh, maybe he's dumber than he seems, maybe we'll be okay, maybe he won't figure out that we're here to spy and take things that aren't ours, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, Roland immediately calls them on their crap almost shortly after meeting them, even letting them think they'd outsmarted him, which is the show of a truly intelligent individual, I think.
Brilliant, I mean, honestly. He plays it off really well, and Noe believes that if they just talk it out, everything will be okay. If they just explain why they're down there, that it'll all be okay somehow. And Vanitas is sure, like the audience, or at least like me and Farseer, that there's no way that will work. Like, he is trying to murder them very actively. He is religious zealot, as we've already said. And his whole point is to kill vampires. That is his job. And Noe is a vampire. They're going to die.
Yeah.
And Noe's over here just being, I don't know, silly, crazy, just a nut, like, overly optimistic, sorry.
The blinking-eyed, wide-eyed protagonist, and Vanitas being much more worldly and a bit more cynical, calls him on his crap immediately, saying they really should just try to avoid an open battle and try to take him out all at once.
Which we totally agree with, because he is being nuts. He's being crazy. He's gonna get them killed by trying to be all friendly and, but friend?
Friendship? Yeah. But,
we his friend?
Yeah. And so, with a clever trap, they manage to get the drop on Roland. But when the critical moment comes, instead of attacking Roland, Noe stops the fight entirely, pins him down, and explains the situation in a rapid-fire session.
And instead of pretending to listen and then kicking his butt,
just lashing out, like immediately taking the first chance to attack. No, he listens. He's like, oh, cool. Okay, you should have just said that from the start. I wouldn't have been trying to kill you guys this whole time.
And it isn't a trick. He's not tricking them to try to get the jump on them later. He legitimately is similar to Noe in that he's like, oh, friend? You know?
Which I like, because up to the point he'd been built up to, they'd been building him up as sort of there's this stereotypical character in a lot of animes who is like the badass church assassin character.
Think Hellsing.
Yeah, like Alexander Anderson from Hellsing. The very religiously strong-willed, very faithful individual who will snuff out evil at every turn. This is a character archetype that shows up a lot in anime, and I'm sure it ties into Japan's history with Christianity. But that's a completely different topic. I'm not even sure that's the kind of topic we cover on this channel. So, yeah, the concept of the hyper-violent Christian crusader is very prevalent in a lot of anime. So you're trained automatically to be like, oh, okay, he's not going to listen. He's going to lash out at the vampire and his human friend, and that's going to be the end of it.
And not only that, you have Vanitas agreeing with you, that is, with the audience, saying, there is no way, I know this kind of guy, he's the worst, he is the super religious that will never listen. And obviously he has experience with these kinds of people, specifically.
Yeah, to the point where he pretty much says almost that exact thing, that like these kinds of people won't ever listen, can't ever do anything. And so For him to drop the fight and be like, oh, no, okay. It's like, see, I was being the racist here. I was the jerk. I had assumed because you were a vampire, you were doing something evil. Oh, you've changed my worldview. I completely understand. It is just this funny moment where it's like, the facade drops and you see that he's just like pretty much no way as a human, basically.
Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate what it shows about them, because you have Vanitas over here, who is very cynical and sure that this is all going to go wrong because of the religious guy specifically, because he'll never listen. And he's a human, of course. And then you have over here Roland, who works for the church, who's a zealot. He believes in what he's thinking and doing completely, and he knows for a fact, as he's been told, that vampires are only evil. They're only there to kill. You cannot reason with them, and he's had experience with them and has killed them. As Vanitas has had experience with religious people and been hurt by them. So they're both on the extremes. And then you have Noe, who is a vampire, in between, who's seen both sides, sees humans and vampires equally, and is actually right for once with the positivity, with the almost blind optimism.
Yeah.
That friendship will win. Reasoning will win. And it did.
And I think part of it, and what makes the scene so interesting, is just the fact that Roland stops and's like, wow, you're the most articulate, well-spoken, most understanding vampire I've ever spoken to. Noe responds, normally the vampires you hunt are actively trying to kill you anyway, so they have no reason to try and stop and talk to you, so you've probably never actually met a sapient vampire who didn't have ill intentions. You just never had, it was never in your worldview that these kinds of people existed. And he legitimately internalizes that and changes how he acts throughout the show.
To the disparity of the rest of the people there. To his fellows, they're concerned because he really is taking this seriously. Like, oh wow, what I believe this whole time is wrong. And I'm going to try to look up history about how it actually is, because he's just open to being corrected, which is really great to see. And like we said, highly unexpected. I was sure they were going to die.
Oh yeah, no, it was
or be beat up, you know.
Oh yeah, no, it was an interesting and very humorous surprise, just because this is a character archetype that has been used so much in anime, the Crusader, that for him to just stop and be like, oh, I was being unreasonable to you. I am so sorry. I should not have just made assumptions based on your race. And that's the end of it. And he actually grows and develops from that, and that's...
And considers him a best friend now. Like, we are best buddies now. And legitimately, and it's not a trick. And I was even like, well, maybe when they get towards the end, he'll trap them again. No! The whole time, all the way through, and even afterward, he is building up his knowledge about vampires and how things actually are to the disgruntlement of others around him, and even his superior.
Yeah. And I guess part of what makes this so interesting is just because one could just call it a bit of cleverness on the writer's part, but just the shift in how, just because they understand that they're playing with an archetype, and so for that archetype to do what the archetype never does in this sort of situation. I mean, it's a simple trick, it's a simple switch of a situation, but it works so well just because you've watched a vampire anime before, you've watched anime where there's a church crusader, you know they're going to come to a head at some point, they're going to fight each other.
And there's always that one who's bright-eyed and hopeful and like, oh, we can all be friends, friendship conquers all. And usually it's one-sided. Pretty much always it is one-sided. One party thinks they can be friends and talk it out, and the other party, if they're willing to talk it out, never agrees in the end, and it comes to blows.
Yeah. So it's just such a simple change of perspective, but it works so well given the context of the scene. And I feel like we just had to make a video on that particular scene.
Alright, well that is our segment for now, where we see a scene that was highly unexpected and went really well. Very surprisingly.
Yeah. Alright. Bye-bye.